Hi, Bill Henshall here again, Constitutional Kook headquarters, as we head into the new year. And it's been a very interesting year and in more than one way before we get out of 2021. But, it looks like to me we have an unprecedented window of opportunity that has lasted a bit longer than I thought it might. And it may continue a bit pending events in the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to make decisions in several areas, as I've discussed in other videos, that could give a real strong indication of where they're going. And I think their backs are up here, with especially with the court packing plan by good old Joe Biden. Now, if he can do that, especially courtesy of an executive order as commander in chief of the armed forces, and I don't know if his commission has suggested it or not. I haven't seen that in anything that they've written. But if he thinks he can do that, what is that telling you? And what is that telling the U.S. Supreme Court? You're not a judicial court. That's the only one created by the Constitution. And if it doesn't exist, among other things, that makes every law in the book, federal, quote unquote, state, whatever, bills of attainder, taking of life, liberty, or property without judicial process, not to mention the trial by jury, according to the courts of the common law, which is available to even inhabitants of territories, for crying out loud, Northwest Ordinance of 1787, but nowhere in sight today in any of what fraudulently purport to be states admitted into this union. So these are the kind of issues I have and the portfolio I have, which is unprecedented. And I'm looking for some serious investors here. I need some help, with networking, imaging, and some investment capital here, serious investment capital. And with what we can do, especially, with success in cases against the mortgage banksters for openers, student loans for another, and anything that has to do with financial transactions, that's credit cards and all that other crap, that we can prove that no judicial court has jurisdiction. It's a huge amount of money. Now, the good news for me personally, and I hope for anyone I'm working with here is, the main issue that we want to get in front of a jury is to make differences in the way the system does business. That for me has always been the priority. Yeah, it's going to be a good chunk of quote unquote undefined dollars, or maybe something else, pending if we can work out, a deal together to get on the same page here. But we want to make changes, and the jury is going to see that, and they're going to see that affects their family and their posterity. That's a lot of leverage, especially with the jury having the power to rule on the facts and the law. That's where we get these bastards, and I believe I can get us there. And before the end of next year, and maybe well before, pending, further events. But as we have to have it either in a state judicial court or one exercising the judicial power of the federal government, whether that's a state court, which at one time it was, and I think still is, or whether it's an Article 3 circuit court. You'll learn a lot about that, during the course of our discussions. Send me an email, uwinnincourt@gmail.com. And we can start talking and see what we can work out. It's an exciting prospect. And if I do say so myself, I have 5 decades of intense, passionate, and independent study of my subject matter. And I know it a cappella. And I can go in there in front of an inflamed jury. And you ask me question 1 Monday morning about the Constitution, we might get to question 2 Tuesday afternoon or maybe Wednesday. I get the point across, and I do it in a way to break through a lot of cognitive dissonance that's so prevalent in this entire system these days. Now, the problem with that is the official actors can't have any of that, because guess what? They have a sworn duty to be bound by this Constitution and laws enacted in pursuance thereof. It's not optional, especially when I've never had any of my documents opposed, especially by a prosecutor, local dumbass, you ass attorney or whoever, and they have the burden of proof to establish jurisdiction. not even acknowledged, let alone attempted to be answered, because attempting to do that will convict them of treason on the record. How is that for an issue to take with you and say, wait a minute, we file claims now and won't even have to file anything, it looks like to me, in any court, let alone one of their corrupt courts. The threat of doing it is going to get them to the bargaining table, because if these issues come to the attention of the public, good Lord, and the mainstream media finally does its job to make that happen, that's what really makes changes a lot quicker than anything that you or I will be able to do. But we're going to get it done. I mean, once we start settling cases like this, it's going to go viral. And that we can make happen, especially with the record I have, as an expert witness, and the relevant, admissible, documentary evidence I've established over the course of 5 decades, which includes a denial of my petition for a non-statutory federal writ of habeas corpus, not by the California Supreme Court, by a deputy clerk of court. And that's one thing you'll see. Send me an email for information, unincourt@gmail.com, and you see this, one sentence letter from the clerk of court, that the questions you ask are beyond the jurisdiction of California courts, as they appear to present federal issues. They don't have federal jurisdiction. And think about this one. When I was back there on a 7-month vacation in Columbia, South Carolina, as a political prisoner, the news came on one night, and you had an attorney making a serious argument. Whether it ever reached court, I don't know, but that a transgender entity, whatever the hell that is, has the right to select its public bathroom, because taking a crap in a government-funded bathroom affects interstate commerce. Astounding. If that affects interstate commerce, what doesn't? And think about this, the Commerce Clause powers of the Congress, and this is U.S. Supreme Court saying it, not me, closely aligned with the Admiralty jurisdiction, quote unquote, New Jersey Steam v. Merchants Bank, 6 Howard 344. That's a jurisdiction that no state court can exercise, and described by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence as a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws. We get that in front of a jury, even one that hasn't been educated, just like we weren't when we were in school either. But that's why we're going to have a lot of jury instructions, and we'll explain the case if we ever get there. Personally, I'm never going to see a jury. I never have, and I'm never going to. But that said, if for some reason that happens, and this jury can rule on the facts and the law, that's why they can't ever let us see one. They get the checkbooks out, and not only we get a really good payday, but part of the deal is we keep our mouths shut. You make changes in the way you do business so this doesn't happen again. You don't uphold your end, we don't have to uphold ours, do we? Oh, another real big deal I neglected to mention. With all these acts of deceit, fraud, and treason that are going on, and that's the U.S. Supreme Court again saying it, not me, Chief Justice John Marshall in Cohen's v. Virginia, 6 Wheaton 264, page 403, there's no statute of limitations, especially since either the common law courts are closed or they've been very carefully concealed, so no one knows how to get into one. That's what I'm working on, to overcome that particular hurdle, because they have to be there. If we have states admitted into this union, it's not optional. But that said, and we get to that point. That's why we don't even have to file papers. We threaten to do it, even in their own corrupt courts, which we convert when we walk into their courts. It becomes our court if that's what it takes. I mean, it's an amazing amount of logistics that and I didn't get it right away either. I was a slow learner. It took me a while. I spent 10,000 hours in a musty old stack of law books back in the day, UC Berkeley and Hastings College, back when I could get into them. Didn't have any government ID, wasn't vaccinated, this, that, and the other. But thank goodness for internet now. I don't spend a lot of time these days, even in the local law library, but you can do it. They have some good tools there in most of the local law libraries. But that said, I have the talent, I have the experience, and I have the passion, and they can't beat that. And you want to get out there and help make changes in the way business gets done here. Changes, for your family, your children, your posterity, and across the board. That's what I'm looking for. And it should be very easy to work with. If we can reach mutually agreeable terms on how to do that, and that will help me to finish the job that I started out to do back in 1983. I can't believe I'm saying this. Valentine's Day Massacre. I was so ignorant then. I spent the weekend in jail. Couldn't figure out why I was there because I thought jails were for bad people. Stupid. I mean, at one time I was the top of the class of ignorance. 1968, what did I do? I volunteered into the Marine Corps at the height of the Tet Offensive. Thank God my dearly beloved mom put a curse on the Marine Corps and said, "You're not going to get them." And you can tell from the video here that I'm more nearsighted than it may at first look. And I get in there to Fort Holabird in Baltimore, Maryland, and the sergeant took one up and said, "If you lose your glasses, how are you going to know who to shoot?" If I had known the right answer at the time, like I do now, it would have been hysterical. I said, "Fine, give me an M16, point me back down to Washington, D.C., 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'll take care of the problem." A war we should never have been in. It's outside the scope of this video, but I'll be doing videos on this subject, and it goes back to Dealey Plaza 2, November 22nd, 1963. So yeah, I've put a lot together over the course of now my 5th decade, and I can do it, and they don't know what to do with me when I show up. That's why I never get convicted, never have lost a case. And even when I did, 20 years ago, I got convicted. I got arrested on Memorial Day weekend for some traffic violations. I had to post bail, which I never do. But my company would have fired me if I didn't show up for work. They wanted to do it anyway. And they got the job done a few years later in any event on different grounds. So I go to the court to get convicted, quote unquote, directed verdict of guilt. And I go later with my sweetie to the clerk of court with some rolls of silver quarters, and I say, "Fine, how many will it take to pay the fine?" She gets all nonplussed, goes back in another office for a few minutes, comes back and says, "We can only accept them at face value." Isn't that interesting? So in other words, if I had brought in today a 1-ounce gold piece that's worth $1,800, to pay a $50 fine, you can do the math here. I mean, it just can't work. And I was ready for him. I said, "Fine, sign this document." The clerk did, which was the document recounting the events exactly as they occurred. I sent it to the local dumbass, demanding to be prosecuted for a willful failure to pay a fine. 19 years later, I'm still waiting. And the mortgage bankster won't have any better option than this. And neither will student loans or any other people you deal with that involve financial interests that deal in undefined dollars. The money issue is the key to the kingdom. I've got it, and I've got it in spades. I'm just looking for a bit of help here, like I said, with some networking, some imaging, and some investment capital. And boy, it'd be the best investment you ever made. So that said, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com, and open up a conversation, and we'll see where we can take this and how quickly we can get the job done. Thank you.